So, someone reached out to me 2 days ago after watching the first video I made on the introduction to stress. The individual wanted me to teach them how to learn or how to master accent. The accent with which they articulate words in their English language. And the first thing that I did after reading the text was laugh. I laughed, yes. The reason I laughed is because I've got this call from different people, many times in the past. Please, can you teach me how to sound this way, how to pronounce words this way, how to sound that way, At the end of the day, I go real with the individual. You see, accent is actually very important, yes, in the English language, 100%. But do I encourage people to sound in a type of way, or do I encourage people to mimic other people, other speakers? It's fine if you really want to learn to articulate words correctly, but having to sound like other people or having to fake accent is what I don't like to encourage people to do because it's not original. Right, so what should be the way forward? There are 3 things to do. First of all, identify your voice. Yes, find your voice. Many times, I've listened to myself and it feels like I don't like the way that I sound, but I can't help it. I've tried as much as I can to, balance the way that I speak. But can I fight my cultural background? No. So, first of all, identify and embrace your natural voice. This is my natural voice. So, after that, number 2, you have to master all the 44 English sounds, the sounds in the English language, how to articulate them, how to pronounce them. The 44 sounds or maybe the 49 sounds or the 3 tones. After that, which is the final step, is to master stress in the English language, how to place stress on words. Once you can have that, come on, Bob's your uncle. Bob's your uncle. Go ahead and speak however that you want. But make sure you've learned all the sounds, you've mastered them, and you know how to place stress on words, which is why this class is an important one for everyone learning to improve their communicative skills or the way that they articulate words in their English language without having to form accent, without having to sound like Mr. A or sound like Mr. B. It's just about you make your natural voice sonorous with the help of stress and right articulation. Before we dive into today's lesson, let me speak to candidates looking to write exams. For students, candidates hoping to write a technical or job examination, please bear in mind that when you have questions on stress, especially as it relates to bisyllabic words or disyllabic words, the question usually revolves around noun, bisyllabic noun words, bisyllabic verbal words, or bisyllabic adjectival words. These are the 3 word classes that this examination bodies often test students on: noun, adjective, and verbs. So that is actually very important. That said, our focus in this class and this lesson will be to explore the placement of stress on 2-syllabic words. When you have words that have 2 syllables, how do you place stress on them? As I've said, in the case of students wanting to write exams, the focus is usually on nominal words, nouns, on adjectives, and on verbs. So when you have 2 words, 2 noun words, 2 verbal words, 2 adjectival words, how do you stress them? There's a rule to apply when you have these 2-syllabic situations, and that is what we're going to be looking at. So first of all, we have a general rule to apply when you have 2-syllabic words, words with 2 syllables, and the rule is this: when you have a 2-syllabic noun word or nominal word, your stress should be on the first syllable of the word. I take that again. The rule simply says that a 2-syllabic noun word or nominal word, a 2-syllabic noun word will take its stress on the first syllable. Whereas a 2-syllabic verbal word, that is verb, a 2-syllabic verb will take its stress on the second syllable. For the adjective assumes the same rule as the noun. So a 2-syllabic adjectival word will take its stress on the first syllable. The noun that has 2 syllables will take its stress on the first. The adjective with 2 syllables will take a stress on the first. The verb on the other hand will take its stress on the second syllable. That said, there is an exception to that rule. And in fact, there are exceptions to that rule because the rule is not always correct. That rule is not always correct in that you have some nominal words, some noun words that will take the stress on the second syllable. Yes. And sometimes you have verbal words, verbs that will take the stress on the first syllable. So the rule is not constant, but in most situations, in most cases, a two-syllabic noun word will take a stress on the first syllable, and a two-syllabic verbal word will take a stress on the second syllable. And finally, a two-syllabic adjectival word will take a stress on the first syllable. So let's use that general rule to stress these words we have here. The first word here, you can see I have the word grouped into noun, verb, and adjective. Here, if you want to pronounce this word as a noun, it is, remember, as a noun we have convict, convict, two syllables, convict, convict. If it's a noun, the stress will be on the first syllable. So you say, I'm talking about convict. That man is a convict. Is a convict. It's not that man is a convict. Now, that man is a convict. So I'm going to be representing the stress syllable with capital letter and the stress syllable with lowercase. So the right way to stress this word is convict. That's the right way to stress this word as a noun. Convict. We're talking about convict in a country. Convict, convict, convict. So when you have two syllabic noun words, you put the stress on the first syllable. So let's look at the verb. For the same word, right? Convict. Now let's consider the same word convict as a verb. Remember, for the verb, the stress goes on the second syllable. So it is convict. Convict. Oh, he's been arraigned in court. That man has been arraigned in court. Is going to be convicted. Is going to be convicted. The will convicting. He will be convicted. The will convicting, not the will convicting. You can notice that if I place the stress for the verb on the first syllable, it will change the meaning of the expression. In fact, it makes no sense. They will convicted. He has been arraigned in court. They will convict him. It makes no sense. They will convict him. As the verb, the stress falls on the second syllable. Of course, we don't have an adjective for convict, right? So convict, 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 convict. This word is desert, desert, desert as a noun. Desert, desert. And then we have, for the verb, it is desert, to leave someone, to abandon someone. Desert. I will desert you. I will desert. I will desert you. Desert. Not I will desert you. I will desert you. No. A desert is a noun, is a place. Desert. Desert. Meadow. Meadow. For the verb, a two-syllabic verb where we take a stress on the second syllable. Desert. 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 The sound here is D, right? For the noun, it is der. Desert. 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 Now for this, we have, for the noun, it is export. 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 The stress is on the EX. That's the first syllable. Export. Export. For the verb, we have export. 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 Oh, sorry, did I just transcribe? I didn't mean to transcribe. Sorry, I shouldn't transcribe. Let's just say, yes, export. My country exports crude oil. My country exports crude oil. Crude oil. Export. 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 Do me. You see, the stress falls on the second. Export. What does your country export? Oh, my country exports crude oil. Exports, not export crude oil. We export crude oil. My country does not export crude oil. Makes no sense. The right stress and the right accent on that should be on the second one, which is export. 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 Export is a type of trade. We have two types of trade. Maybe I really can't remember. We have export and we have import. Export, import. The same applies to import. What do you import? I like to import dresses, shoes, wares. Import. Import. I will import 3 iPhones. I will import 3 phones. I will import. Oh, I'm talking about import as a trade. I'm talking about import. 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 That's the noun. Import is a trade. Import is a verb. What are we going to import? Import, import. So let's come to number 3. Number 3 is protest as a noun. Protest. This word protest is usually abused on national television, especially in my own country, Nigeria, when people have to protest on the street. I hear things like, we're going to protest. We're going to protest. It's no, we're going to protest. We're going to protest. Protest. Like here, oh my goodness, am I losing that? Protest. Then the noun is protest. Protest, not protest. The noun is protest. Protest. The verb is protest. When are we going to protest? 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 Don't me protest, 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 protest. But I've seen journalists on the TV, very popular TV in the country, who pronounce protest as protest. We're going to protest. You hear people say the masses are going to protest. They're going to protest. They're not going to protest. They're going to protest. They're going to protest. Protest. The masses are going to protest. Protest. The noun is protest. When is the protest taking place? The protest. Protest. Middle. When is the protest taking place? Oh, we're going to protest tomorrow. This word is produce, 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 produce. They should be the items from the farm, the things you produce on the farm, produce on the farm. So produce, produce, the noun is produce. Farm produce, farm produce, farm produce. And then we have produce, produce. So what are we producing today? We are producing produce, 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 farm produce. My farm produce are not selling word. Produce, 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 not produce. Farm produce. We're going to produce. Farm produce. We're going to produce. Now here we have the noun. We have rebel, 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 rebel. Here we have rebel, rebel. Remember that I said a 2-syllabic verbal word will take its stress on the second syllable, and a 2-syllabic noun word will take its stress on the first syllable. So let's look at the word address. In the British English, the sound here is the schwa sound. So everything is address, 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 address. The stress is here. But in the American English, the stress is on the first syllable, which is address, address, address. But because we teach the British English, we don't care about the stress being on the first syllable. What I'm saying, in other words, with address is that there are exceptions to this rule. There are exceptions to this rule on disyllabic noun words, disyllabic verbal words, disyllabic adjectival words. This word, the noun, has a stress on the second syllable, the same way that the verb has a stress on the second syllable. So it is still, that, and then you have address, and then you have address. So did you see that? The stress is still here for the British English, right? So this rule doesn't apply with the word address. That's what I'm trying to say. In the British English, the noun and the verb are pronounced the same way. Oh, where do you live? Can you please give me your address? Give me your address. Not give me your address. Give me your address. In the British English, it is address. The verb is address. The noun is still address. But in American English, it is address for the noun and address for the verb. So please take note that I did say that general rule has its exception, and with address we have one of those exceptions. So let's look at letter. Letter, of course, letter is a noun. We have letter. The stress is on the letter. When are you going to write the letter? Letter, letter, letter. The first syllable takes the stress. The second goes down. That's that about that. For this word, we have refuse. That's waste material. Refuse. Refuse. And then the verb is refuse. 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 Don't refuse my handshake. Have it. Come on, have it. Have it. Don't refuse. Refuse. For the noun, it's refuse. Refuse. Now this word can be a verb and it can also be an adjective. So we're coming to adjective now. Let's come to adjective. So here for the adjective, it is frequent. Frequent. Remember, I just said that the adjective and the noun have the same. The same rule applies to the adjective and the noun. A two-syllabic noun word takes a stress on the first syllable. A two-syllabic adjectival word takes a stress on the first syllable. So frequent. But for the verb, the stress goes to the second syllable. So here it is frequent. Frequent, not frequent. There's a word like that. Come on. Why are you looking at me like that? Frequent. He frequents himself in my house. He frequents himself in my house. That means he comes to my house often. Frequent, frequent. Yes, that's correct, Liz. Frequent and frequent. It comes frequently. That's an adjective, right? I mean, that's an adverb. Whether it's an adjective, whether it's an adverb, the same rule that guys adjective is the same rule that guys adverb. Adverbs, adjectives, nouns, they have the same rule. The same rule that applies to the adjective applies to the noun. So frequent. Frequent is an adjective and the stress goes on the first syllable. For the verb frequent, 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 frequent. So that's about that. And we have lovely. Lovely is adjective. Lovely. Love. Love. Lovely. Give me a lovely smile. Lovely. 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 So that's that about the lovely. Then for absent. Absent is an adjective. Absent. Absent. Oh my goodness, sorry. Absent. Right. Is absent. Now, we also have absent. 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 That's a verb. Remember that the verb with two syllables often takes a stress on the second syllable. That boy absents himself from school. Absents. Absents, that's the verb. Absent can be a verb. Absents himself from school. Absents himself from school. From school. Always. He absents himself from school. He's absent today. Who is absent today? Who is absent today? Oh, that boy is absent. Absent. That's an adjective, but for the verb, it is absent. I will absent myself from school tomorrow. I will absent myself. Not I will absent myself. I will absent. No. I was absent yesterday. I will absent myself tomorrow. So that is that about that. Then we have enter. Enter. Enter is a verb. Now look at with enter. Enter is a verb. And now the stress goes on the first syllable. Enter. Enter. The stress is here. Why? That's an exception. I'm going to be explaining this particular exception later in subsequent video. So any word that ends with ER doesn't attract a stress. Rather, the stress goes to the other syllable, especially with a two-syllabic word. Enter, enter. This is how this word is transcribed. Enter, enter. The stress is here because this is a short sound. Any syllable that has the short sound is not stressed. It's not stressed. So the stress falls on the first syllable. And this goes to explain the fact that this rule that a two-syllabic noun word takes its stress on the first syllable and that a two-syllabic verbal word takes its stress on the second syllable is correct most of the time, but it is not always correct, right? There are exceptions to that rule. And this is one of those situations. Enter. I will enter a school with singing. I will enter a school with singing. Enter. Please enter. Who is at the door? Please enter. Not please enter. Enter my room. No, not enter. It's enter. 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 You can see we've added an exception in enter, and we've added an exception in address. Address, address. Address a noun, address a verb. The same stress on the second syllable, address. I will address him tomorrow. Give me your address, not give me your address. In American English, it's address for the noun and address for the verb. But for British English, it is address, address. Noun, address, verb, address. So that's that about that. Open. Look at the word open. Now here, the stress. This is also an exception. Open is a verb. And the rule states that a two-syllabic verb should take its stress on the second syllable, but there's an exception here. Look at how this word is transcribed. Open. See, in the right articulation of this word, the stress here, the en here is pen. Pen is a short sound. It's a weak syllable. It's weak. Weak. And remember, I just say in the second introduction that you don't stress a weak syllable. You don't. So this is a diphthong. So the stress comes to this. Open. So that's why the answer here is open. Sorry, open. This goes like this. Open. The stress is here. Open. Please open the door. Open the door. Open the door. Open the door. So that is that about that. And then penultimately we have alive. 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 This word is an adjective. This word, alive, is an adjective. And I did say that an adjective with two syllables will take a stress on the first syllable according to the rule. But in the case of alive, we have an exception. The transcription of that word is alive. Alive. The stress is on the second syllable. So it's like this. Live. Why is this not the case? Why is this an exception? The reason is the sound here is the short sound. It's like you're saying about, not about. Round about. It's not about. It's about time. It's not about time. It's about. Again. I'm going to slap you again and again. Yeah, I will slap you again and again. Yeah, again like this. Again. So the stress is always here. It's like this. Gain. The stress is always on the second syllable in this case. Why? Because the first letter here is pronounced as a short sound. Again, alive. So this is an exception to this rule. Finally, pardon. Pardon is a verb. Pardon me, please. Pardon. Me, though. The stress is on the first syllable. Why? The reason is the dawn is a weak syllable. Pardon is a short sound that ends that. So we have here, let me clean this now. So for the verb, we have pardon. This is where the stress is. And this defies the rule that a two-syllabic verb will take its stress on the second syllable. You can see the stress is coming to the first. And that establishes the fact that when you have a weak syllable, you don't give stress to it. So in that case, you ascribe the stress to the first syllable. But of course, most of the time, the rules simply state that a two-syllabic noun, when you have a noun that has two syllables, the stress goes on the first syllable. When you have a verb that has two syllables, the stress goes on the second syllable. When you have an adjective with two syllables, the stress goes on the first syllable. When you have an adverb, the stress with two syllables, the stress goes on the first syllable. But we have exceptions to that rule. And one of the exceptions is that when, for the noun, if the first syllable contains a weak vowel sound, like a short sound, you run away from the first syllable and you go to the second, right? The second syllable will take the stress. And when you have a short sound ending a word, the second syllable, please run away and go to the first syllable because weak syllables aren't usually stressed. If anything, I'm convinced that in this class we've learned how to pronounce words. So I have to place stress on words with two syllables. Remember, a two-syllabic noun word will take a stress on the first syllable. A two-syllabic verbal word or verb will take a stress on the second syllable. A two-syllabic adjectival word will take a stress on the first syllable, such as frequent. we have frequent. Absent, adjective, verb, absent. Frequent, adjective, frequent, verb. Pardon, verb. Why? Because the pa is a dominant vowel, the long R sound, and then you have done, pardon, pardon, pardon. The O-N, the O in the D-O-N is a weak vowel sound. So that is that about this class. Thanks a lot for watching to this time. Remember, you don't have to fake accent. All that you have to master is the 44 English sounds, or in total, let's say 49 sounds, as well as stressing the rules guidance stress in the English language. Thanks a lot for watching again. Remember to keep learning right and keep speaking right. See you next time. Subscribe to this channel if you haven't and give this video a thumbs up. Bye for now.